Welcome back to another episode of the British Society of Criminology's Hate Crime Network podcast with your hosts, Dr Rachel Keithley and Dr Irene Zempi. Today we are honoured to be talking to Dr Sasie Rehka. Sasie holds the position of Criminology Lecturer at the Faculty of Law, Crime and Justice at the University of Winchester. And today we are going to be talking to Sasie about her doctoral work and her thesis entitled Life After Trafficking, the social reintegration process of victims of sex trafficking and their families in Indonesia.
So, Sasie, your PhD in sociology focused on life after trafficking, the social reintegration process of victims of sex trafficking and their families in Indonesia. Can you please provide us with a brief overview of your PhD in terms of what you examined? For example, the topic, the research aim and methods. Thank you.
Thank you. So my PhD in criminology, it's looking at the life after being trafficked. So the life of sex traffic victims and the life of the families after having the victims back in the family. So it's about the reintegration process of sex traffic victims and their family in Indonesia. And in doing so, I'm looking at their life before being trafficked, their life during the trafficking, and of course, the life after being trafficked. So when they return to the society, to their life after being trafficked. So my research is not only looking at the victim's life, but also the family, because the reason is because studies on reintegration of sex traffic victim is very, very less, especially in Indonesia. And studying on the life of the victim's family, it's practically zero. There is no research on that, which I think they are also to some extent have the impact of having the victims back. I can say that they are the indirect victim, so they are suffering as well. They've been victimized for having the victim back in the society, by their family, long extended family, neighbors, etc. And when I was doing my PhD, initially I was looking at the victims and family, but at the same time, I thought it's good to see the effectiveness of support system provided by the government and the NGOs in facilitating the victims' return to their normal life. So this is something, this is one of the heart of the research, the main discussions in my research as well. In looking at how the victims in the shelter, looking at how the government actually handled this. And I discovered interesting themes such as corruptions as the enabler, and the family also, there is hard trafficking, soft trafficking, and the impact on them. And the reason behind this research, my background actually is law. I did my degree and my master's in law, and I did my degree in Indonesia, so I'm Indonesian by citizen, and I speak the language, and I think this is very good point if you want to interview vulnerable people, to know their culture, to know their language, the dialects. And I did my master's in Malaysia. During my master's time, when I was doing my master's, I involved in many activities at Indonesian's embassy in Kuala Lumpur. And in that embassy, I've met many victims of human trafficking, many. So I was thinking what the government could do to help them. Not much actually. They were just stayed in the shelter at the embassies. They basically couldn't leave the country because of the documentations, and it was very sad. So this is something that I was thinking: is there anything that we can do to help them? So this brought me to another research, to a PhD research, which focusing on sociology, criminology, on something, not only the law, not only looking at the legal perspective. So that's the main reason behind my research. And also, like I've mentioned earlier, lack of research on the integrations of victims in Indonesia, especially, and also research involving families as the victims. And also lack of awareness. Indonesia is a country that has, we have 17,600 islands, and many different culture, and people often looking at victims of sex trafficking as a sex worker. not all sex workers are willing participants. Some of them, they couldn't give they refused to give the consent, but the situation pushed them to do such thing, to be sex workers. So there is lack of awareness of what is trafficking, what is sex trafficking, what is the difference between voluntarily sex worker and sex trafficking victim. So that's another reason. So basically, the other one is to see the effectiveness of the support system in terms of the government, the stakeholders in anti-trafficking cases. So these are the reason behind the research. And the methods that I was doing was a semi-structured interview with victims. Initially, I had 26 victims, participants, but many of them withdraw. So at the end, I could only analyze 18 victims, could only present or take 18 victims to be the participants in my research. And I did also group interviews with the victim's family. I had around 43 family members from different victims. So I did it separately. So I did a group interview in the family's house, and the participants' detail would be for the group interview would be male and female. So I simply identify. I want to see what male views of the victims, the views of victim by the female family members. So there is a part of discussions as well in my research. And the last one, the data collection taken through focus group discussion. Initially, my plan was to have a focus group discussion with the member of the NGOs and also government. But at the end, they refused to take part. They withdraw last minute. So it was only with the member of the NGOs. And the area where the data collection took place are in the different area. So mainly in the area where the trafficking happened in Borneo Island and in Java. And it is fully funded actually by one of the anti-trafficking agencies in Indonesia, fully funded for the research, for the data collections. So yeah, so they basically really support these activities. And the victims also, they felt very happy because they felt that people are concerned about their well-being. They felt more empowered by sharing their opinion. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing such a fantastic overview of what is a much needed project. And I wonder, you mentioned obviously that distinction between sex trafficking and sex workers. So how did you define sex trafficking, and then also how does it affect victims and survivors?
Yeah. So sex trafficking is a form of human trafficking. Now people can say a form of modern slavery. So there is also, and if you want to talk about definitions, there is a huge discussion around human trafficking and modern slavery. So I will take human trafficking as the main discussions. So it's a form of human trafficking that specifically involve the exploitations of individual through various means, such as threat, use of force, fraud, manipulations. But at the end, the purpose of that is for sex exploitations, to exploit victims for sex services. It can happen locally or internationally as well. So there is issue of consent here. I mean, even during my data collection, many victims came. They were purely sex workers. They were not victims of sex trafficking, but they identified themselves as a sex traffic victims instead of sex worker. So there is issues of consent here as well. It's very important to have this consent, to use consent as the difference between the main differences between sex worker and victims of sex trafficking. So even sex trafficking can happen because of hard trafficking or soft trafficking. This is another term. Soft trafficking is when victim normally knows that they are going to be trafficked for sex exploitation by their family member. So and they develop coping strategies because they know I'm going to do that job. when I reach the destination. So their resilience factor are better than victims from hard trafficking, which had no idea that they are going to be the victims. So these issues of consent, even the soft trafficking, they knew, but there is element of I don't want to do that within them. So it's already victims of sex trafficking. And how does it affect victims or survival? It's definitely a lot of consequences of or the impact of being victims. Physical impact, such as health issues, sexual and reproductive health issues. It's very common. They also very exposed with a risk of sexual transmitted infections, and also substance of abuse. Many traffickers or brothel owners use drugs and alcohol as a means to control victims, which could lead to addiction and other health issues. So addictions, even after they leave that trafficking, leave the exploitation, because of the addiction, push them to be a sex worker or to be re-trafficked, and or even can be the traffickers. So this is can be means to control victims and also to follow what the traffickers wants. And there is also psychological impact, trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, flashback, severe anxiety, uncontrollable thought. This is when they could commit suicide because they had severe trauma, low self-esteem and shame because of the stigma associated with the sex exploitation, and social and economic impact as well. The social stigmatizations and isolations could happen as a result of rejections by the family, friends, and communities, society. So this is they will have another trauma, loss of trust, and they become more difficult to move on, and they could develop emotional bond with the traffickers. Now they felt that the traffickers could accept them better than the society. So there is a dependency at the end. This is where they become more vulnerable for being re-trafficked, or can be for different types of exploitation, or very vulnerable to be the traffickers. This is what they call happy trafficking. Happy trafficking, when they apart from as a means to survive. Happy trafficking is a term introduced by the United Nations, where victims agreed to be traffickers because it is a means to reach a freedom, to reduce exploitations, and to be in the better level, to stop being more exploited, but also to be to gain more emotional bond with the traffickers. So psychologically, it can really give them a lot of trauma and create dependency as well to the traffickers. That's from the victim's point of view. From the families, could also be as severe as the victims. As my respondents, one of the family member, one of the father of the victim, committed suicide after knowing that the victim had HIV and had children from the through the exploitations, and the society refused them to stay in that area because of afraid of being infected with the HIV, and society told them that they would burn the house. And at the end, the father decided to commit suicide because couldn't stand with the so much depths, so much difficulties to move, so much issues within that area. So it can be very severe, the impact. Apart from physical, psychological, and also social and economy impact. Yeah.
Thank you, Sasie, for shedding light on the multiple levels, both direct and indirect impacts of sex trafficking. Moving forward, what is the profile of the traffickers? And theoretically, why would you say that they commit those crimes?
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned earlier about soft trafficking and hard trafficking. So soft trafficking involves families. So families can be the traffickers. So again, if we traditionally we only know traffickers would be the recruiter, would be the transporter and the seller. But if we look at into a very close lens, look at very in depth, after recruitment, there would be brokers. From brokers, there would be different people that involved. So it is not 3 or 4 peoples involved in that. There were 10 peoples actually involved in that journey. So I would like to start with the soft trafficking first, which involves families. Families can be father, mother, possible siblings, uncles, grandfather, anyone. And the main reason why they commit this because of the pressure, economic pressure, poverty, greedy, being so greedy wants more and more. And in Indonesia, I'm talking about Indonesia, woman is often seen as an asset in the family, asset in a way that they can be sold, they can be manipulated easily to work in different countries. Indonesia currently has the biggest number of domestic helper supplier sending domestic helper to different countries such as Middle East and Singapore and Malaysia. And they are very vulnerable for being trafficked. Why women? Because they can easily they are basically very they can easily be convinced. So these are the reason why poverty, greed, being greedy, pressure are the reason of the soft trafficking happen, which involves family. So victims again knows that they are going to be trafficked, and they already create a coping strategy. So in this context of trafficking, the impact is not as severe as the hard trafficking victims through the hard trafficking. Second, profile of the perpetrators through the hard trafficking, which involves stranger, returnees, um, job agencies, stranger. And normally why they commit these returnees, perhaps because of the happy trafficking, because of the dependency, psychological, emotional bond with the traffickers. And for strangers, perhaps money wants the personal benefit. Yeah. And this is something that the profile that often appeared in many research, and also in my research. Victims' families, which is part of the soft trafficking, and stranger or friends, someone that has no emotional bonds with the victims. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those. What I feel are numerous, reasons why perpetrators are motivated to engage in sex trafficking perpetration, and I think it speaks to the complexity of the crime. But then thinking a little bit about the crime itself, why do you feel like sex trafficking remains invisible, quote unquote, in research terms, but also if we're thinking about police recorded data as well?
Right. Remain invisible in research terms. This is quite really linked to the previous one, the profile of perpetrators. So I would like to highlight here before I forget, a government also can be one of the perpetrators behind these trafficking cases, and because of their power, the cases remain silent. So we couldn't identify, we couldn't track the trafficking routes. We couldn't identify who are the victims. So, why sex trafficking happen goes to your questions. I would explain through different people here, based on the traffickers, victims, society, government, and anti-trafficking agencies. Traffickers remains invisible because trafficker knows the nature. They know the new methods. They have advanced methods to conduct their crime. So the nature of the crime is becoming more advanced. It's very difficult to identify, and it's very difficult at the end to trace, to track the victims, because they also have new methods of controlling. For an example, some of the cases, methods of controlling, the classic methods is to, putting threaten the family. I would kill your family. But now they have new one. For an example, of the victims, like porn videos, and they would distribute that videos if you make a police report or if you ask for help. So basically, these are the one that victims become invisible, remain silent. Another new methods of controlling is victims often, this is very common in Bangladesh, in India, and also in Indonesia, in Asia, including Southeast Asia. When victim, if you come forward, I would somehow inject you with HIV, with something related to HIV. So this is also something that would threaten victims. They wouldn't come forward. That's the nature of crime. Advanced methods of controlling, advanced method of manipulating. Second one, in terms of victim doesn't know that they are victims of sex trafficking. They are not aware that they are victims. Many of them thought that they are not victims, but they thought that they are committing crime, because traffickers often manipulate them. They're scared of the law enforcement. They don't want to come forward because they're worried if they were, especially those who are trafficked internationally, no documentations, you will be deported, you will be arrested. Second. The third one, this I think relevant to society and also victims as well. Definitions of sex trafficked victims often misinterpreted with the sex worker or prostitutions. So this is also another reason of why the sex trafficking cases remain invisible, which leads to false identification. So it becomes even law enforcement. There is in Indonesia, I'm talking about Indonesia, there is ideal victim and undeserving victims. Ideal victims would be, if you're victims of sex trafficking, even the NGO itself, one victim came to the shelter and asked for help. At that time, victim looks like someone who is not a victim, looks normal, like with a clean dress, look decent, and ask for help from the NGOs. Like, can you help me? I need to, I'm a victim. I want to learn something in the shelter so that I have new skills to, so I can be more empowered at the end. NGOs, the member of the NGOs refused to accept because she didn't look like victims. So you don't look like victims. So again, this is ideal. They have ideal victims would be someone looks vulnerable, from poor family. They have. So these are the reason why identification become more difficult, and victims become very reluctant to come forward to report crimes. And so there is lack of awareness society in this context. Apart from definitions, lack of awareness, lack of like in UK, a lot of advertisement about how to identify victims of trafficking, but it's not the case in Indonesia. No awareness, difficult for society, is so difficult for them to identify, to report crimes, so it remains invisible. And lack of support, again, victims, now we are moving to the government and anti-trafficking agencies started to put stereotyped this ideal victim, undeserving victim. So victim felt that there is lack support, there is a huge lack support for them. On top of that, when it comes to government restitutions money, the compensations, it's something that should be given automatically to the victims when the government brought the case to the court. But in reality, the money, restitutions money, is something that victim has to fight to get for. They have to fight. It's no longer rights of the victim. So there is a lack of trust. There is corruptions going on. Different data, different NGOs has different data. Difficulties to access data. Data is not reliable because lack of understanding of what is victims, what is non-victims, for an example. So false identifications. So these are the things which makes researcher also difficult to collect data to identify victims. I had to withdraw few respondents because they were not victims, but they identified themselves as victims. So, but because they knew that they would get merchandise from UK, they're really desperate. So I said, okay, never mind. I gave it to them, but I couldn't include because they themselves are not aware, or maybe they just want to get the things, or maybe they really had no idea what is the victims. So these are the reason, in my opinion.
Thank you, Sasie. Again, this is really insightful in terms of why all involved parties remain invisible, but also why they get involved into sex trafficking. What does the return and social reintegration process involve for victims of human trafficking in Indonesia? And in that case, what are the challenges for successful return and reintegration?
Right. So I would like to start with the key aspects of successful reintegrations. For a successful reintegration is economic independence, social acceptance, and the programs, suitable programs from the government and the NGOs. But this program should be based on the victim's specific needs as well. So how does the return and social reintegration process in Indonesia here? Firstly, by identifying the cases, assisting victims to exit, identifying their needs, even when they rescued or when they escape or when they asked to live in the brothel itself, when they came to the NGOs, for an example, when the stakeholder of anti-trafficking when the stakeholder identify that there is a victim, they should immediately identify or have a very in-depth detailed background of the victims and their specific needs. These details including their the impact, psychological impact, physical impact, everything, and their needs, what actually they need, and identify their life before and during. Identified what is the family look like, what kind of background that the victims came from. I think it's very, very important, because if they fail to understand the background of the victim, the strategy would be wrong. So they have, every victims are unique. They have different strategy we should have different strategy to help them in order to integrate with the family. So that's very important. And also everything should be voluntarily, the process, and require consent from the returnees, from the victim. So this very important. So during the assisting the victims, when they identify the needs and identify the background of the victims, staff should also ask whether they would like to reintegrate or not. So it should be voluntarily, and should be consent should be given by the victims. So in that order, they would be able to help victims to restore their life, health, social well-being, and to help them to reintegrate in the society. But all these, in order to achieve all this, definitely there will be challenges such as social stigma, discriminations also from the local authority. I'll give you an example. For an example, victims who were rejected by the family would also, in many cases, we Indonesian, we have a special card. They call that family card. So based on that family card, in that family card, there will be name of the family member. For an example, my father's name, Gopala Krishna, father, and then next mother and daughter, and the status as well, whether married, divorced, or yeah. So if and the father or the mother, the leader of the family, have the right to remove family members from the family card. If someone doesn't have family card, it will be difficult to issue ID card for someone. So if my father remove my name from the ID card, from the family card, I won't be able to renew my ID card, which is valid only for 5 years. So I have to renew every 5 years. So this is happening, and many of them who've been removed from the family card are not given opportunity to renew their ID card, even by the local authority. They refuse to help. So these are the challenges as well to help them to reintegrate. So stigma, discrimination in the society, from the local authority, lack of social perception, acceptance, all these force them back to the sex industry, or sometimes force them to go back to the traffickers. See, emotional bond, it is this difficult to break if we don't accept or we don't support the victims. Another challenges is limited funding, poor program, lack of understanding of victims' needs. So this is very important. Based on my own experience, when I collect the data, when I do the data collection, I had a dinner with a member of the NGOs or the gatekeeper who helped me to meet the victims. I was very surprised to know that they were discussing about the budget from the government, and they were talking about percentage to goes to their pocket. So the funding is there, but there is a corruption even in the NGOs, and they refuse to let the victims to leave the shelter because they want to accumulate. They want to have more victims in order to get more funding. I was very disappointed with that, and I knew that I came with a very clear mind and very positive to help victims to do research. With this attitude, I felt there is a contradiction, so I had to be careful at that time. But we can see here, they say limited funding, but they might have enough funding, but there is not all NGOs, but there were NGOs that are doing unethical behavior. So poor program is based on the victim's needs. Not every victim likes to do tailoring. Not all victims likes to do, let's say, a hairstylist course. Not everyone likes to do baking. So they need to know the needs. And if there is a failure to understand victims' needs, it will be a big obstacles or big issues in achieving their integrations process, in helping them to be independent economically. So this very very important, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And obviously you've mentioned some really complex challenges there, and it speaks to the vulnerability of human trafficking victims. And we see that vulnerability reflected in, population data and in the administrative challenges you've just spoken about. So what, in your opinion, do you think is needed to make integrating human trafficking victims easier?
I think firstly, to improve data management, to have a detailed information of victims, their background and their specific needs. And all this data should be accessible by all stakeholders. So not only one NGOs, or see, like some NGOs, they kept certain information they wouldn't want to share because they wanted to keep some budget. Perhaps this is the reason. So I think there should be a transparency. There should be a transparency in all levels, and a better data management system. And second, to help victims to access their rights and services. For an example, like renewing the ID card, it helps them to what they call that, to reform their identity. To they should be given also opportunity to create a new identity. So help them to have a new identity in a new place. It will help them as well, because the stigma is very strong. It's very difficult to remove the stigma in the society, the culture. So perhaps there should be a given opportunity to create a new identity, form a new identity, and help them to go to a new place so that they can start a new life fresh. And to provide support service based on their detailed informations. Like I mentioned, everyone have their own needs. Everyone have their own impact of the victim. So the health, education, training, legal assistance. So different coping different coping strategy to come out, different coping strategy to handle the PTSD, because everyone are unique. They have different different types of trauma. and increase the campaign and public awareness. I think it's very important. And lastly, I think monitoring and keep on evaluating the victim's progress is also very important. Not only the victims, but the family as well. So visiting them, ask them how are they doing, whether they are doing okay or not, is there any challenges, is there any obstacles. So I think this continuous monitoring is very important as well to help the victims also to gain, basically they will have trust with all the stakeholders, with the society. I think it's very, very important. Yeah, I think these are the thing to reach this successful reintegration, the key: economic independency, social acceptance, and the to meet the program to successful program. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. I think these are fantastic suggestions for supporting victims and their families. You also mentioned better legal support. So how the law and more generally the criminal justice system should be shaped in order to prevent human trafficking. So not just about reaction, but prevention. So how can the legal system and the criminal justice system more generally ensure that we can prevent it before it happens?
I think it's important to highlight that everything should be victim-centered approach. Victims, again, family, not only victims, but the family as well. So firstly, not only focusing on prosecuting the traffickers, but also to provide clear legal basis on the victims' rights and support. So it should be clear that the government against human trafficking, like in England, although there are human trafficking exist, but it's very clear that the government really campaigning a lot that it shouldn't be happen. It's something that against humanities, human rights, a crime against human rights. So this has to be emphasized more in some countries like in Indonesia. Secondly, it should be given a heavier punishment for the traffickers. So lengthy punishment, significant fines, and also to secure the assets of the traffickers. So make sure they immediately secure the assets. So the traffickers won't be able to move the assets to different place, to another people. And when it comes to government officer or another stakeholders that helping the traffickers, the government or the law enforcement should take a serious actions against them, even put heavier punishment, because they are the one that should protect us, protects victims. So should be given heavier punishment more than the traffickers, I can say, because in that way they would be scared. Government or people who have the power that to stop would be also scared to help the traffickers, because corruption is the main enabler in this crime. And witness protection, I think, is very important to protect witness, including the family of the victims. And yeah, awareness campaign. And I mentioned earlier, it should be clear that it should be a victim-centered approach. So victims shouldn't be deprived of anything, of their rights. They should be given legal aid, support service for them and their family. Restitution's money should be given automatically without fighting for it. So because now they have to fight for it, and they really have to fight very hard. And in most cases, they could only get a little bit because the traffickers had no money to pay. So it's something which is, even if the traffickers had not, let's say, doesn't have money to pay for the compensation or for the damages that he has caused, the government should be able to provide that amount for the victim. So I think this is very, very important. In that way, not only the law, the effective. This is the way to see whether the regulation is effective, whether everything is moving forward. Right now, this is where we have a report, TIP report, Trafficking in Person report. It is annual report issued by American government, TIP report. And Indonesia was always in tier 2 watch list, so they have the rank. And last year we were dropped because there is this TIP is based on the reintegration victims. So in order to stop trafficking, there should be support for the victims. There should be enough campaign awareness on this. So this if the country have a lot of very good mechanism or legal instruments, but there is no implementations, healthy implementations, proper implementations, it won't be achieved. So I think this is very important to focus on the victims. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think there are some really important suggestions. And finally, if we're looking forward, what further research have you either already undertaken or do you feel needs to be done to further address this issue?
Okay, thank you. Right now, I'm working on my monograph based on my thesis, and I have also submitted my book chapter on forensic science on human trafficking cases. So I'm waiting for that to be waiting for the feedback from the reviewer. And in the future, I want to see also want to do more research on the effectiveness on current reintegrations process. So meet the victims. Perhaps I can revisit the victims and ask how they feel after the first meeting that I had in 2019, the reintegration process, that they are not all are doing reintegrations process. Some, yes. So I want to see how are they doing. So it's very important to see the whether it is achieved or not, the current reintegrations program that the government offered. And also further research on social attitudes towards victims, understand the root of stigma and discriminations. And also, I think it's also good in the future for me to see victims' experience in shelter. And it's very important as well to see, I think, the effectiveness of reintegrations in different countries, to see the differences, and perhaps something that we can propose. I can work with the local authority on how to make it better. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Again, thank you so much for sharing your insight from your PhD and overall work. I think this topic is so under-researched. So yeah, we look forward to hearing more as your work is progressing in terms of future research.